Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008, the North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.
Welcome to Prairie Mosaic, a patchwork of stories about the arts, culture, and history in our region.
Hi, I'm Bob Dambach.
And I'm Barb Gravel. On this edition, we'll meet a woman who dedicated her life to a Minnesota state park, learn about the hardships of homesteading from a woman's perspective, and enjoy the fresh, original sounds of a band led by sisters. Life in the mid-19th century was tough for everyone on the windswept prairies of Manitoba, but it was women who made the huge impact that allowed the prairies to be settled. Here's a segment from Prairie Public's documentary series, Built on Agriculture.
It's been said that if men were the pioneers, women were the settlers. They were the ones that created a home out of some very, very sparse resources that they had to work with when people first arrived here. And they were doing this all the time while they were caring for and producing children, which were a major source of labor on the farm.
And the day I was born, the thrashing crew pulled in that morning to start thrashing. And Mother not only had to look after me, she had to feed the thrashing gang, about a dozen men. And one of the neighbors came over to help her look after feeding the thrashing crew, and a week later she had a baby of her own.
We had to make a living in the 30s, and Mother had to help with the milking at night, and I did. We all learned because the men were busy with using horses to farm, and so it was a whole different era.
We've seen the farm women's jobs change over time, as all jobs on the farm have changed. But they're still the home builders, and they're still feeding the family. In many cases, today it's the farm wife that leaves the farm to work, and it's her salary that helps to support the family.
I think it's electricity was the bonus that came to all rural communities in 1947, because we had no electricity on the farm. So it was a role to be homemaker, and you had to make the bread, and if you did the milking, then you had to put it through the cream separator, which was a horrible thing to wash. But Mother would print up 15 pounds of butter at a time and send them to Deloraine, and that was the money for groceries.
As these farms became established, the attention very quickly turned towards community structures that provided some civilization and social support to what they were doing on the land. The women's movement becoming very powerful through organizations like the Women's Institute organization, and many of the women who were key players in that were people who came from pioneer stock.
I met one lady when I was working with WI, telling me that when she was farming there, she would go to a WI meeting 6 miles away, and she would walk with a baby in her arms, another one over her shoulder, and the little ones walking for 6 miles to cross a stream and go to that meeting and then come home and do the chores.
The Women's Institute organization, which fought, of all things, for public restrooms, because in that time, women would come to town with the family. The men could go to the pubs, but women weren't allowed there. There was no place for women and children to be, and that was the foundation of the restrooms.
For a lot of women, Women's Institute was their only contact as a group together. An older lady said that one of their members came in and she was pregnant and she had 9 children already at home. The group gathered around her and just cried because family planning wasn't legal at that time. Cases like that, you feel that you've been right inside a person's heart.
Though farmers, for the most part, were exempt from military service, and that doesn't mean they didn't go, but I think that's where one found the women taking a much bigger role in the management of agriculture. And I think when the fellows came back after the war, the ladies had taken over a certain amount of doing some of these things. And I think we find a lot of farms now that the role played by women, particularly women who graduate with degrees in agriculture. More than half of the students taking agriculture at the University of Manitoba are women.
The first woman, Dorothea Clark, graduated in 1922. It wasn't until 13 years later that the second woman graduated. And looking at the statistics, up until the mid-60s, from the time the college started until the mid-60s, there had been only 21 women students graduate. In the mid-90s, 2 of the years there was actually 75% of the student body were women. Now it's about 50-50.
Cora Hind was a woman who came to Western Canada in the early 1800s. She had come out here to work as a school teacher and wanted to become a newspaper reporter. She was originally turned down. It was considered newspapers were no place for women to be. But she ultimately became the agricultural editor of the Winnipeg Free Press. And she took that job and created a persona around herself because of her very intuitive ability to judge how much the crops were going to produce. Every year she traveled across Western Canada and looked at the crops and wrote what she thought that crop was going to produce, and she was remarkably accurate in her projections. And she was widely followed by anyone in the world that had an interest in what Western Canada was going to contribute to the world grain trade. She was also very active in the suffragette movement and very active in securing social supports for women. After fighting so hard to get a job working in the press, she was ultimately paid the best compliment she could have received at the time. Her colleagues reported that the best newspaper man in Western Canada was a woman, and that was E. Cora Hind.
In 1903, Mary Gibbs became not only the first female park superintendent in Minnesota, but a pivotal figure in the development of the park. Thanks to Mary's bravery, we're able to enjoy the beautiful pine forest of Itasca State Park that were on the brink of destruction.
When we were developing the new center at the headwaters, there was no question who we were going to name it after. We were going to name it after Mary Gibbs because of the role that she had played. Even though it was a short moment, only 3 months in history, it was one that drew attention to the park. When the park was established in 1891, we just say it was a park on paper. We did not own any of the land. We had to acquire it. And some of that land was already in private ownership, different timber investors in the area. The park being a new park, being that our state was just getting into the business of operating a state park, that they wanted to negotiate and work with the lumber companies. They were given permission to load logs on Lake Itasca in the winter, and the first log drive went down the Mississippi River out of Lake Itasca in 1901. Our fourth commissioner was Jonathan Gibbs, and Jonathan Gibbs came to this area. He brought his wife, his youngest daughter, Mary Gibbs. His job was to continue to acquire land that was in private land holdings, but also to start managing what land we had. Little did he know he was going to pass away in February of 1903, and his daughter, Mary, was appointed as acting park commissioner. She had done a lot of secretarial work for her father, so she was familiar with the operations of the park. And when Mary Gibbs was taking her office, she took her responsibilities and her roles seriously. She strongly believed in the development of this park. She was 24 at the time when she got the appointment. You have to think of the era. In the country at that time, women didn't really have the right to vote. So for her to act in a role appointed by a governor was very unusual. And with that came some challenges. She was having to work with the lumber companies as they were getting ready to float their logs down. As she was trying to enforce the policy of not letting the water rise too high behind the dam, that they were building this head of water up to float logs, every time she went to the site to ask them to open the dam, they would say, yep, sure, and they'd open up the dam, let some water out. By the time she'd get to her office, they'd close it and it would keep building up. And she kept writing the Attorney General saying, do I have authority to do this? And she was getting very frustrated. It blew up at the dam, so to speak. The waterhead was getting too high. It was 3 feet above flood stage. It was flooding the forest land behind, and Mary Gibbs was told that she had authority to go up there. The state had condemned that land back in December, that we owned the site where the dam was. She could go forward and tell them they needed to let the water out to lower that water level. She walked up to that site with Martin Heinzelman, who was a constable in the area. They're going to tell him, open these gates, you're breaking the contract. And the foreman, Wolf, he looks at them, points his gun at them and says, if anybody puts their hand on that lever, I'm going to shoot it off. Martin Heinzelman, fearing for his life and Mary's life, returns the papers to Mary and said, I can't serve these. Well, Mary Gibbs walked up to that lever holding those papers. She put her hand on the lever and she said, I will too put my hand on this lever and you'll not shoot it off either. But Mary Gibbs was interviewed in the 1950s. She said, now in hindsight, I realize that was rather foolish. I could have been shot. The very next day, Mary Gibbs was served with papers. She was forbidden to be in the area because in those court documents it was said that she and Martin Heinzelman were the ones who were shooting off their guns and threatening the lives of the men at the site. She wrote a letter to the Attorney General and said no such thing happened. Heinzelman attested to it. Other homesteaders in the area who were nearby attested that she didn't have a gun, that she did not do this. But by the time the St. Paul and the Attorney General could send any help her way, by the time they arrived at Itasca, all the logs were gone. The water had gone down and there wasn't an issue. So poor Mary, in her frustration because she felt she wasn't getting support, she turned down the appointment. Her family didn't know that part of her history. She was a woman who believed the past is the past and you just move on. And when our building, the Mary Gibbs Center, was dedicated, it's the first time any of the Gibbs family came back to Itasca. And so they were very honored when they came and saw their grandmother's name on that building, and for them to actually walk up and see the Mississippi River and see the vast pine forest that she had helped to protect and set aside, that they were very touched to know that their grandmother in 1903 helped play a part in establishing and helping to preserve the pine forests of Itasca.
The Homestead Act of 1862 made it possible for anyone with the will to work hard and improve their land to claim 160 acres for their own. But some of these homesteaders challenged the stereotype of who homesteaded and why.
I've heard it said there were no women homesteaders. Well, not only do we know that there were wives who were homesteaders, we also know that there were single women. The original Homestead Act of 1862, as passes through Congress, says that to claim your free piece of land, you must be the head of your household, which generally means a man, but of course there is the opportunity for women, if they are single, widowed, divorced, to claim a piece of land. Women did indeed homestead on their own.
Dear Joan, I have arrived. After many and diverse stages, I am on my claim, the southwest quarter of Section 6, Township 145, Range 94, with a rice pudding boiling on the parlor cook stove. Thursday we unloaded my goods from the train all day, and early Friday morning, Ringling and his circus left the town. I led on my bicycle. Cass followed with his horse Boxer and my Democrat wagon loaded with necessary leftovers. Bill, with my load of lumber and my portable house, came next, and then Harland on the bandwagon, and then Ringling himself in the top buggy. After dinner, we all pitched camp on my land. Dirty? Oh, you never saw such a dirty bunch. But there is very little wind. Oh, and the mornings and evenings are beautiful. The meadowlarks sing beautifully, and altogether it is fine and dandy. I told Mother I didn't like to be my own trumpeter, but I didn't believe that Father need be ashamed that I was only a girl. Love to all, George. P.S. Forgot to say my nose is peeling.
Walter Prescott Webb, in his really famous historical work, characterized men and women as very, very different. The men were enthusiastic, they were adventuresome, they were seeking adventure, but women were reluctant, lonely, scared, and those stereotypes really didn't pan out. The reasons for homesteading, I didn't find, were different for men and women. Women sought adventure, just like men. One of them mentioned they were simply curious. They looked at this big map, and in the middle there wasn't very much, and they wondered what was out here. I think one of the basic reasons was financial, as it was for men. They wanted this to be a successful economic venture.
My grandmother was Tira Schonke, and her claim was in Williams County, just south of Tioga, just about to the Missouri River. She married my grandfather, Henrik. He had just gotten through with his residency, so they emigrated to the United States and ended up in North Dakota. He caught meningitis from one of his patients, and he died, leaving Tira and 3 small children. She and Henrik were very much in love, and it was a very hard thing on her that he died. She had a strong will, and she didn't want to go back and be a burden on the family. They had with them a nurse that they brought from Norway. They were very close, and the 2 ladies decided to go out and claim the homestead, eventually get enough money, maybe sell the claim and go back to Sweden. Tira claimed 320 acres. The nurse was slightly less than that. They had primarily cattle and horse that they raised. Once she got out there, she really felt that that was a good thing for her, that it was healthy, that she liked working with the animals. She just decided that she was going to make this work. She had 3 young girls. She put them all through college. I think on her will, she made all that happen. She makes reference to the fact that had she either gone back to Sweden or continued to live in a town, she would be agonizing over his death. Whereas out on the homestead, she was so busy that she felt that it helped her get over the fact that the love of her life was gone.
Sisters Tanya Kemper and Monica Winter lead the band Bloom. With their powerful vocals and original music, you're sure to be entertained.
Just know I am with you. You'll find me in the sun. Let the light absorb you. It's all right to come undone. Fill the emptiness with a peace. Let love replace the pain. And if the sun's no longer shining, I'll send you comfort in the rain. Every farmer fields a harvest, lush when weather's mild, night and day he nurtures, tends it like a little child. But when the weather turns cruel and wipes away that dream, it soars through the winter to bring new life in the spring. If your soul is dry and barren, your spirit's dried as earth that's parched, and all the color stripped and withered, the landscape's gray, the sky is dark. The lightning starts a fire that cleanses as it burns through the scarred and ashen wasteland. You know that beauty will return. Bring you out of darkness, I'll bring you to the light. I'll send your soul so weary, endurance for the fight. Just rest now, breathe my love in. I'll be here quietly till you call upon my name, and your thoughts turn my direction. No, your thoughts won't be in vain. And as you whisper that you need me, listen to your prayer. I live within your heart, love. You will always find me there. Just know that I am with you. Find me in the sun. with peace. Let love replace the pain. If that sun's no longer shining, I'll send you comfort in the rain.
If you know of an artist, a topic, or an organization in our region that you think might make for an interesting segment, please contact us at prairiemosaic@prairiepublic.org. I'm Barb Gravel.
And I'm Bob Danback. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Prairie Mosaic.
Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. The North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.